Getting all these really crazy.
Hi, my name's Amelia Kramer. You both know me. I'm the owner at Upwards Art Studio. So today we're going to do one of our bi-weekly demos. So this week we're going to talk about Liquitex Gessoes. So I have a variety of gessos here, and we'll talk about how, what sizes they come in, how to apply them, how to prepare your surface, what they're used for, and lots of different things. Okay, so I'll switch cameras here. Okay. So Liquitex Gessoes come in two lines. They come in their basic line, which is their kind of their student line. So these are more affordable. It only comes in white, and it comes in 4 sizes. So it comes in this 250 milliliter tube. It comes in a 473, this size, and it comes in some gallon sizes, which are huge.
Yeah.
So this one's pretty economical. It just has a bit more filler in it than the professional line. So you might need a few more coats of it than the professional line. So the professional line has a white, obviously, because we all think of gesso as white. We have gray, and we have black, and there's also a clear. This is the one that I actually use the most because I do mixed media and encaustic. And there's also a heavy body one. We don't stock that in the store right now, but if you wanted to try it out, and then we can order it. That's absolutely fine.
Question is, for doing the floor mats using the canvas and the gesso.
Yeah.
What weight there do you recommend? Like I always just use.
They're all the same. Yeah, I would probably just use a regular.
Yeah, it's all I've ever used.
These ones are regular weight.
Yeah.
And then there's a super heavy one,
yeah,
which gives more texture. So if you wanted to start out with something that has significantly more texture, because these are going to be flat or pretty flat, then you could use that instead.
It doesn't matter, the heavy body one isn't used with specific types of paints.
No, they're all compatible with all acrylic paints. They're compatible with oil paints. You would just need more layers underneath just to protect your canvas or your board.
like as a base for using fabric.
Yep. Yeah. You can use it on fabric. Yeah.
And then use the medium.
Yep.
Over top. You
can use it on wood. You can use it on ceramics. Basically anything that you want to put paint on.
Just to help it adhere.
Just to help it adhere. Yeah, so we'll go through some of this stuff as we go.
Okay.
So gesso creates a very smooth surface. So I'm just going to move these to the side a bit, maybe right here. So this is a pre-gessoed canvas, right? We've all kind of seen these. They're all kind of a little bit rough. So we can, so this doesn't need an additional coating, but we can put one, there's people that do prep these so that they become more and more smooth. I'm just using the regular things that I use. So this is a birch panel. So it's cradled on the back. So these are not prepped in any way. I can get them pre-prepped. I find that the surface is super slippery. And for the applications that I use them for, it's actually too smooth. And then I ended up sanding it and then adding another layer of gesso. And why don't I just just start?
Yeah. And some fabrics, if you're putting them on one of these, to if it's really thin fabric, if you've used silk in some spots, does tend to be kind of roughy. And I never thought of doing that.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it protects so if I was painting with oil paint is very, like, it has solvents in it, is very
absorbent or absorbed.
Oil paint can degrade things. So over time, if I don't gesso this, the oil paint is actually going to eat through the wood. if I want to paint on paper with oil, and I don't use the oil paper, which is treated already. If I want to use like a sheet of watercolor paper, because I have lots of watercolor paper, I can gesso with this, and then I can go on to oil painting, because again, oil will eat through the paper. So it protects the substrate. It also helps create some texture if you need it, or some extra texture. You can use it as you're painting, so you can white out areas. Basically, it couldn't be used like a whiteout, like we would when we're writing, and you're like, nope, that was wrong. So you can use this to bring it back to that white, or black or whatever. And you can also, it also helps the longevity of the painting if you're worried about archival things. Then it helps with that. It also helps the paint adhere to the substrate. So there's some, so I kind of talked a little bit about the different lines. So this, they're both lovely. This has higher quality ingredients. This has more binder in it than the like chalk that is used for the grit-ish. These have a more refined, so they're you can get a smoother finish with this one than you can with this one right off the bat. This has more coverage, so it's more opaque. So it just has a few extra benefits than the student brand. And of course, there's the price point difference, right? If that's a concern of yours, then there is a price point difference, whereas this is cheaper than this one.
But you're gonna get better.
You're gonna get better quality and
And-
better coverage with
Yeah.
this one.
So you might have to do 2 coats of this or 3,
yeah, to
whereas
get
that one may be 1 or 2, right?
Yeah.
And I'm standing here thinking too that even with the gesso, like you have to use it on both sides of your canvas when you're making a mat. And sometimes the gesso underneath, because it's not really smooth in just areas that you didn't mean it to be that way,
Yeah.
but you can see the brush sort of. You're using a panel, a fabric.
Yeah.
And you know you have to very easily adhere it to it. And I'm thinking that, so use the more expensive, the better one on the right side where you're
Yeah,
going
yeah,
put whatever, even paper,
yeah, yeah,
and use the other one for coverage on the parts you don't. So I
Yeah.
usually just use acrylic paint over that on the back of the mats.
yeah. And this is cheaper than acrylic paint, right? Like it's an option instead of
Yeah.
using like to white out like a mistake or something in your painting that you've already started, using a whole bunch of titanium white, or you could just use a bit of
Mhm.
this and it's gonna have super.
And
opaque
I learned
coverage.
that with the Deco paints too, that
Yeah,
on the back of
Yeah.
they do not stand out.
no, they're craft
Yeah,
paints
this
with a
is meant
lot of
to
filler.
adhere too,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's
Yeah.
gonna stick.
Yeah, so I did kind of say what kind of colors they are. All of the professional ones, it's the same stuff, just different coloring, right? So I'm just gonna demonstrate what they look like. So white is pretty obvious, right? It's white. I'm just gonna so give your gessos a little stir. In these ones, I end up shaking them because the gesso can settle to the bottom. So if you get a big bucket of it, use a paint stick stirrer to just stir it up again.
I have found when I get to the bottom that I add water, it's just because it's so thick trying to pull it across
Yeah.
fabric.
Yeah, so every time that you go to use it, just give it a stir and stir it like you're stirring a
Mhm.
jar of, or like a gallon of paint
Yeah.
to paint your walls. So I'm just gonna, like, you could put it on a palette. I'm just gonna put it on here for ease. So you can brush it on, you could roll it on, you could use a palette knife. So I'm just gonna use a foam brush. And I should have taken out more water from that. But you can add a little bit of water to make it more, not softer, but smoother finish. I wouldn't add more than 25% water.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna kind of make some strips of this stuff.
I like it thin down on my last coat.
Yeah. Right, so that's a nice smooth, and these brushes are fairly cheap, right? Like if you accidentally leave it,
Yeah,
It's
and
not
it gets
gonna-
hard.
yeah,
Oh, it's hard.
yeah, it's,
Well, then they're only gonna last so long anyway.
yeah. So I'm just going to,
Oh,
I'm
the
gonna use
gray's
a
nice.
brush. Just to show you, this is, I shouldn't dip these in water. I usually dip my brushes in water to begin with so that it moves the paint a little bit better.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is with a brush. And this is the gray, obviously.
I never knew there was colors.
No, me neither.
And I'm gonna show you how to color it as well,
Oh,
Oh.
so that you can, you know,
Mhm.
not be bound by white, black, gray.
So then you don't have to spend more money putting a color on top of your back of, like, say,
Yeah,
a
so,
matte.
so lots of people paint, like put like an orange color on like a landscape painting to begin with,
Yeah,
so that you get
yeah.
that
Or
extra.
acrylic, yeah.
That-
That's what I do, yeah. But you wouldn't have to, you could just make your color with that, right?
Yeah, so I would probably put a layer of, unless you're on, like if you're on a canvas already, then I would just use the gesso, the color gesso right away. On something like this, right, you can still see
Yeah.
the wood. So if you're okay with that, then you could just go straight to it. If you want to, and you have to use it with the clear, right? So if you wanted that white background, I would do a couple layers of the
Yeah.
white to get it.
because it's not really, if you're putting oil on that, it's still not,
Yeah,
wouldn't be covered with one coat.
Yeah.
On wood especially.
yeah, wood needs, because this first layer is super absorbing,
Yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
that's.
Yeah, from here I can
Yeah.
see the green.
Yeah, so it's, and this is quite black. I didn't get very much on there. We got some white mixed in there, that's okay.
Actually, it's kind of cool.
Yeah,
It'd be interesting to start with a black canvas. wouldn't it?
because when you go to buy them, they're quite expensive. And you can just do this with any one, right? Like if you, and you can see, especially on the black, that it's really absorbing into the wood, that first layer. So you do need, you know, at least 2 layers, if not 4.
Yeah,
And it only takes about half an hour to dry on any of this. So it's not like I would prep a whole bunch at the same time so that I would move this out of the way, get my next one. And by the time I'm done, you know, 6 of them or something, then the first one's dry and ready for me to sand.
yeah.
Yeah, so once you get a layer, you would sand it with a sanding block, just like a regular sanding block. This one's a bit dirty and this is all wet, so we'll wait for a little bit and that just makes it more smooth. Yeah, and just makes it even, like it would take out this, now that I'm gonna rub it out, but that brush mark-ish that was
Mhm.
there. Okay, so let's do the clear. So clear on, I actually have some clear dried on this one. So this is a demo board. So on this, where is it? It's over top of this thing, so you can feel it. It's quite gritty, right? That should be super soft. Or not super smooth.
Yeah, I want to do that.
Right? Like all of this is all, because that might cover the whole thing actually. So it dries completely clear, right? You can see that like all the colors are actually true on that.
Yeah,
So on clear, on something that, obviously I use this one a lot because it's like glued itself shut. So we'll just do it on this one and then we'll color it for on the thing that I can think of the word for.
Does that have any on it already?
It doesn't have anything. So this
what
is quite.
what
sweet.
is that? It's marbled it.
Chalk paint, actually.
Oh, I've got some of that left from doing furniture.
Okay, and maybe I should just pick out a new brush.
It's a nice effect, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this has collage underneath with some chalk paint and water, kind of to grunge it up. And then I put a line drawing. I think I used Sharpie because that was the best thing for the student to use. So So you can see that it kind of goes on a little, it looks a little cloudy when you put it on, but then as it dries, it gets completely clear. So you can kind of see the cloudiness difference. I'm not sure they can see it on the video. You can see it in real life.
And that's better than having to spray.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So if there's anything that will move, right? Like this was charcoal, or this is charcoal for sure. So if I just brushed it on like that, it would all smudge, and it kind of smudged a little bit. But I would put a spray fixative on that
Yeah,
and then wait for the fixative to dry and then put the
then do
clear.
the gesso.
Yeah.
And by putting gesso on that, that's already partially worked on, what would be your hope in putting that on there to add more?
To add
finish
more
it?
so it almost creates like an isolation coat, which is a bit cheaper than an isolation coat, like, because there are isolation coat products, that now you can go on top of this and it won't disturb what's underneath,
Okay.
right? Because the water will reactivate this chalk paint,
Oh, yeah.
right? So if I want to, go on top with something else that's water-based and I don't want to reactivate this, then I would put this like barrier layer on top.
Mhm.
Also on things like this, actually not this, on things like this one, where I have this big hunk of ink, it's actually acrylic ink. So for encaustic, the wax won't stick to that. So if I was doing this for encaustic, I would just put the clear gesso over top of the things that the wax won't stick to.
Oh,
And then the wax will stick to it.
oh, okay.
And
Um,
so on the other one, what would you add to that? On
This
that
one?
one, yeah, what would you add over top of that? It's a beautiful effect.
Yeah, I might want a different color of chalk paint that, like, if I put like a blue on it, like a dark, like ultramarine blue or something, it might start going like a baby blue because it's mixing.
gonna
it.
Hey,
Like reactivating
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
other layer, if you
Yeah.
want it
Yeah.
to be really dark,
Yeah,
or if you want it to be really sharp too, it could probably
Yeah.
get blurry too.
yeah,
If you want to maintain the sharpness of your
Yeah.
lines and.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, so
Interesting.
it's a good like barrier thing, right?
Mhm.
So you can also color any of the gessos. So if you think about it, if you color the white, it's going to be kind of pastel. No matter what you do, there's always going to be that white. If you color a black, it might go maybe like a Payne's gray, or
Brownie, maybe.
maybe you could get it brown. It might take a lot of pigment to do that.
Yeah, I would think.
And the gray, you could tone it with like orange or something just to make it a little bit more not so gray. So the clear gesso is what I would tint, because I like bright colors.
Yeah, I do too. Crazy on it.
So I'm gonna mix this on my tray, which probably you can't see in the video. So I'm gonna move all this stuff over. So there's kind of two options for, well, there's a bunch of options for coloring, for tinting gesso. So this is the clear. Liquitex has a fluid line, so does Golden. They also have a soft body, so you can just add a bit of this in here. And it's gonna be like an acrylic media,
Oh, isn't that
where it's
beautiful?
gonna look a little bit white to begin with, but then as it dries, it's gonna turn into this color.
Oh,
So I'm just gonna put it on here. Right, so I can tint my background to be whatever color I want it to be. With the clear, like tinting these, okay, maybe, but like the clear to me is,
well, it's more
It's gonna give you more of the
transparent.
pigment, more of the
Yeah.
effect of the color.
yeah, so if you're doing like a landscape with that orange, like maybe do this as
Yeah.
your first coat instead of using all of that orange acrylic paint, because that was very little fluid acrylic. So I'm going to find a spot on here. Here, let me wash this brush. So there's another product that you can use, and that's a dirty brush, whatever. Okay, which is called aqua dispersion dyes. So these are by Kama Pigment. They are dye, like dry pigment suspended in water. So that's all it is. They're highly pigmented, like super pigmented. So I'm going to use a bit of this. He's gonna get a new spot. So you would only need like
Drop.
a couple drops. Maybe that's too much. I got one falling off the end. I would probably wear gloves as. So this can be used to pigment, right? Like
Isn't
that was actually a
beautiful
lot.
color.
Yeah.
So it can be used to pigment gessos, paints, like any acrylic, just like acrylic mediums or the polymer medium. Yeah, and it's highly pigmented, right? Like that was probably one too many drops, maybe two too many drops. But like, look at that
Oh,
color
the
is just
color.
gorgeous.
I love that.
And they're made in Montreal. Kama is a paint company in Montreal that all they do is pigment and all they do is, you know, paint and pigment. And they're, it's a small company and it's just, yeah, lovely. And they have a lovely store in Montreal. Right, so I got lots left over, so we'll just go to town.
Nice.
And I'm sure you ladies can think of other ways to use
What
that
is
than I
it?
can.
So the cost of this is probably a lot because of the pigment count, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it does come in different sizes, so we don't have that huge set in the store. We can get it, but we have a smaller size set.
But you have to buy, you can't just buy one.
I could add that to my next order. Yeah. Anyway, now I'm kind of getting it all the same thing. So you can kind of see that there's some brush marks using that brush. This is all, that one's all black, so we'll just deal with that. I'm just gonna put that back. So those are a great option for pigmenting things where you just need that little tiny bit. A little goes a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it can mix with any water-based things, basically. Okay.
And it's great because it's safe.
Yeah, and they're all right. It's not like a dry, it is a dry pigment, but it's suspended in water, so it's not going to like blow everywhere in the wind.
What would
and
happen
stuff.
if you put that over top of the green?
Just want one drop. Have to brush it out or spray it with water or something.
Yeah, see what happens.
No.
I got a lot of green on the brush. Right, it's just gonna tint it that little bit.
Oh, I like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can make your own like acrylic paints with them. You can make your own, tint your gessos, tint
So
your,
you'd always
your
use
gel
the gesso
medium.
clear as a back, like as your,
to get that vibrant color, because
Yeah.
otherwise it's gonna go,
Yeah, if you wanted a very pastel-y color, you could use the white.
yeah. So if I wanted, I'm just gonna add some, right? Like, let's just mix stuff up here. Right, it's
Yeah,
gonna
so
be,
Yeah.
more minty color.
yeah. Because of that white, right?
Yeah. Depends on what you.
And maybe I just want an underpainting of all these different greens or something.
oh, nice.
Okay. So kind of talk a little bit about application. I probably should have put that point in my notes ahead of how to color gesso. Yeah, so you put your coats on, sand in between, depending on how, you would always sand in between, but the amount of sanding would determine how smooth the surface is. So if you wanted
Yeah.
a bit rougher, then you wouldn't be as hard with the sanding.
Mhm.
And always clean your surface. Like if you're using something that isn't canvas or isn't wood or isn't, right, if you're trying to gesso something that you found at the thrift store or something, right, like an object, then I would just give it a little, like a wipe with soap and water if you need to, or sand it if it's wood or something
Mhm.
to get off any like excess.
And you, so
crud.
you could put that on china or,
Yeah,
as
Yeah.
long as you weren't gonna wash it a lot, right?
yeah. Well, I wouldn't, yeah, if you have gesso, this is not food safe. Actually,
Yeah.
all of the acrylics
Yeah,
aren't
no,
food
yeah,
safe.
no, I was just thinking like, vases or things like
Yeah.
that.
Would it stick to a shiny surface? Like a vase?
This does for sure. This one does for sure. The clear gesso does
Does it?
for sure. Yeah,
So that just, yeah, if you had a vase that was just an old
yeah.
crappy piece and you wanted to just.
Yeah, because usually acrylic paint falls off, like it delaminates. So I have found that this doesn't, it creates that barrier, that bond layer to the glass, and then you can paint on with like acrylic
Yeah, it
or
could be
whatever.
glass too.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it works with you. Every time I flip the page, I'm like, oh, we just covered that. Oh,
'Cause we're
good.
so curious.
Yeah, I know. Well, and your questions are always relevant and always, yeah, they're always,
Yeah, because I'm
Yeah.
always thinking of and helping you to
yeah,
make it relevant and things that I think I would run into when I'm doing it as
Yeah.
you're speaking, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, kind of preempting.
So once you have all your coats on, I'm just gonna move this to the side, I think. Probably it's got a lot of stuff on it. So this one is that's actually dry to the touch now. So I could give it especially this white, I could just give it like sand. Brush off any excess.
So we're not
Random
talking
s-
going crazy, just a really light set,
Yeah, unless you want to go crazy.
unless you want it super,
Super smooth. So then I can add my next layer. Now what brush had white on it? Neither of them.
It was the sponge, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then I put black on it.
Oh,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's very. I'm just gonna deal with this.
I think those wood handled ones are a little sturdier than the red plastic handled ones. I find ones always comes off.
Yeah, I got black on here and my brush is still really wet. Anyway. So I would put that on. That's a really wet brush.
But the marbling, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
that's an interesting practice.
Yeah, so, and then I would wait for that to dry and sand it again, and then
I can
another.
see that as a great background if you're using newspaper prints. You
Yeah.
know, and so, on top.
Yeah, so just, if you buy a regular canvas, and this is too, I do know people that do this as part of their practice. They actually do it on boards too, that if they buy a pre-gesso canvas, that this is too rough for them because they want that really very, not matte, but very smooth finish to their paintings, right? Not big clumps
Yeah.
of paint, like it needs to be really smooth for them.
Like the beautiful ones that you do out there are so smooth and
Yeah, more like an acrylic painting where you're going, is that really paint? Because it's so smooth.
But you're also eliminating the texture of the fabric too
Yeah,
by
yeah. So you would
putting
put
more layers
yeah,
on
so
it
you would
and
put a layer of the white in this case or whatever, sand, a layer of white sand, and then when you're getting closer to how smooth you want it, you can actually seal that with a layer of matte medium so that it's completely smooth. And then you can go onto your paint. So yeah, depending on what you want your surface to be in the first place, then there's some strategies on how to make it super smooth. And then things like the super heavy gesso, you could, I would probably use it on a board rather than a canvas, just because it is heavier, right? So the weight of it can pull down your canvas and stuff. So yeah, so was there that was pretty quick. I had a lot of pages of notes, but
so the uses of the super heavy,
yeah.
you were just talking about that. Can you expand on that a bit? Like what for you, when would you say I gotta use the super
If
heavy?
I wanted a textured starting point, and I'm so it's not going to be like a modeling paste, but you're going to be able to put it on with a I just don't have it here. You're going to be able to put it on with a palette knife, and you can get the texture within the gesso layer.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, and then you wouldn't necessarily need to sand the whole thing, right? Or sand it at all, right? So because you're not looking for a smooth surface.
Wow, that's interesting. So yeah, you can create that sculptural effect
Yeah,
in the base, and then
yeah,
which would be interesting applying paint on top of it. You know,
Yeah.
moving it around, rubbing it off in certain areas, so you get that
Yeah,
kind of real 3D effect.
yeah, and again, you can tint it, but it would go the pastel-y colors.
What would happen if you, just being economically
Yeah,
minded?
yeah.
If you took gesso and just used some of your acrylic, just folk art paints?
The folk art paint has a lot of filler in it, like a significant amount. So really the amount of paint that the pigment that you're actually getting in a folk art paint
Yeah,
is like so minimal
yeah,
that this will go,
yeah,
you'll get more coverage, you'll have to use less paint, you'll have to
Yeah.
you'll go to the store less.
yeah, depending on
Right.
what you want.
And
Yeah.
you're gonna have a better product.
And you're
like
gonna
the
have a better
Coopers
product,
in
yeah,
This
yeah.
year, you saw some of them that they use the vehicle paint with and watered it down in like,
yeah,
doesn't look like.
no.
Yeah,
And when
yeah,
you
it's always
start,
better
yeah,
quality, more pigment is generally the rule, right? And
well,
you're
and
paying
you,
for
and you
that pigment.
use less pigment,
Yeah.
like you use less
Yeah.
paint because your paint, you're not trying to like cover something with a white or something because there's more filler in it,
Yeah.
and then that filler dries clear or something, or,
Yeah,
yeah,
so for me then, if I was doing gessoing a canvas and I just wanted to give it a little bit of a non-white, you
Yeah.
wanted to make it a bit of a beige or ivory,
yep.
if you could use something cheaper for that, because you're not looking for a high level of intensity.
I would still use something like if you had an acrylic, because you can use heavy body, you just need to mix it a bit more
Yeah.
and mix it with
Yeah,
a
yeah.
palette knife. So if you have that in a heavy body or like the rate or the basics line, these have more adhesive properties than
yeah.
the folk
Yeah.
art stuff.
Okay.
Now, do they come in little ones? Or
I have an Amsterdam is another great paint company. I have little tiny tubes of theirs. That's what Peter Reed uses in his classes. I'm just trying to use this gesso. Yeah, so I have some little tiny tubes of those ones. Actually, I can get little tiny tubes of basically anything.
Yeah,
that you want.
I'm ending up with so much stuff.
Yeah,
You don't, you do a couple of things, but you don't want 50.
yeah. Oh, and I forgot to talk about this. Oftentimes I tape my boards. That way, if I choose to like maybe stain it with a wood stain on the sides, then I'm not staining the gesso. I'm actually staining the wood and we'll get the grain
Yeah.
of the wood. So I use the blue painter's tape and I tape over onto the back. Like if it's a gallery panel, then I'll use 2 rows of tape. Yeah. That's just a personal preference side note.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I looked for that blue, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it's at Home Depot in the painting section.
I didn't look in Home Depot,
Okay.
Home Hardware.
The blue is like,
Blue is
Better.
it's a Scotch one, so the green is a Frog Tape brand.
yeah,
I'm gonna go a little brand crazy here. The
Yeah.
Frog Tape does it either sticks really well, so well that it doesn't come off,
Yeah,
or it doesn't stick enough and then it falls off as you're painting.
yeah.
This does neither.
Oh,
This is like the perfect to take it off. Here, we'll just take some off right now. I just
yeah,
gotta
that's
find
what I
my
found with the frog. It was so irritating because it's such a pain.
I just went through that.
Yeah,
You did it,
It's such a
Diane.
pain to tape, and then you're not even on your first coat and it's coming off.
I
It's
know.
like,
Yeah,
are you kidding
yeah.
me?
Or like
Yeah.
you said on the woodwork, I just went through that and I couldn't get it off the edge.
Yeah, and there's
And I
actually,
didn't want to redo the white again. And I had a heck of a time because you could see the green when you stood back, just
Yeah.
down in there.
yeah, so I've had some on boards that, I painted, I don't know, like 5 years ago. And then finally got around to finishing them and taking the tape off. This still came off. Right, and the frog tape, if you leave it on that long, and it is a sticky one. Right, then
Yeah.
it's like you're peeling off little tiny bits at a time,
Yeah.
and it's just, Yeah.
Yeah, or it's peeling off the layers below it.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I found. I've been
Back
using
to
it.
the thing you only get what you pay for.
Yeah, yeah. And they also make a purple one, which will tape to paper and not wreck your paper. So
Oh,
just, yeah,
that's interesting.
And that's they have that in
at Home Depot,
too?
yeah, also. in the paint section. It's called like
Oh.
Super Delicate or something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway.
Well, that's interesting.
Okay, I'm gonna spotlight myself again. Replace
We have a
spotlight.
greenhouse and then we need to shut up.
I know.
Okay, so that was Liquitex Gessoes. I think then I always forget to print out what the next one is. I think it's TriArt mediums, the reharvest mediums. So TriArt is a Kingston paint company, like Kingston, Ontario, and they make mediums using recycled products. So it's pretty interesting.
Oh.
So that's next time. We have lots of workshops on our website, upwardsartstudio.com. You can find all of our products on Upwards Art Studio and shop online. So have a great day.
Thank you